the spirit that I have in me can keep going. One, because my son, like that came out of my body, so I'm going to do everything. So sleep is on the back burner. It's like a different feeling. Like I would die for my kids, literally. And I know that's dramatic, but like, that's how I feel. So sleep is like, that's just sleep, I would die, you know?
On this episode of Consider That, we will be exploring the 2006 biopic, The Pursuit of Happyness, and examining the challenges entrepreneur Chris Gardner faced as a father and husband through his journey from homelessness to becoming a millionaire. What is sacrifice in a marriage and in parenthood? How do we balance our passions and our obligations? Do positive outcomes justify risks when loved ones are involved? How can partners support each other as they pursue their dreams? We will examine these questions and much more as we consider the pursuit of happiness.
All right, y'all, we're gonna talk about the pursuit of happiness with a Y. I remember when I shed a thug tear. So just as a quick overview, The Pursuit of Happyness is a biopic that follows the life of entrepreneur Chris Gardner, played by Will Smith, a medical equipment salesman. So he invested his entire life savings into bone density scanners, which I never heard of, which never really took off. When his wife leaves, Chris and his son become homeless, and he takes on an unpaid stockbroker internship for a chance at a full-time career in a new life. While they struggle, Chris ultimately receives a job offer, excels, and eventually becomes a millionaire. That's the Spartan versions because it was pretty traumatic. So Ashley and family, as business owners, I want to come to you first. Though it paid off in the long run, what are your thoughts on Chris taking a chance on an unpaid, non-guaranteed opportunity with a family depending on him?
I'm going to say it was irrational, making that type of a choice. Personally, with me and my wife, Ashley, we sat down and talked about it because we both had full-time jobs and, there was an opportunity for us to create our own business. So it was really about really sitting down and discussing the options, reviewing what can happen and kind of projecting what we want to happen. It really helped that, I had my full-time job. So, that helped us make that decision easier, where, I could see that she was not as fulfilled as know that she can be, the potential of that. So it was really a chance for me to kind of, give her that space and freedom to explore that opportunity.
Yeah, and then to piggyback on what he said is like, first of all, thank you for like not allowing, that's not the right word, but to consider the conversations for me to be a full-time entrepreneur, because that's super important. But I understand where Chris was coming from in regards to like wanting to live his dream. And I'm a big dreamer and a doer, and I felt what he was doing, right? I felt that he needed to be in a certain place, right? But one thing that we do is take calculated risk, because the question was about family, and we have 3 boys, and we're married, and we don't do anything without their thoughts, like without their considering them, right?
Well-being. Yeah.
Their well-being. And so I'm a big risk taker. I would say I'm a bigger risk taker than you, but it's calculated and it's like measured. And I'm like, I'm not going to do anything to jeopardize my babies and my husband and have to like sleep in a subway, like, like a subway bathroom rather.
You think because of that, like he was not as calculated, Chris Gardner?
I would say that he was not as calculated. I think that what happened was that he was in his head and he wanted something so bad. And there's layers, right? You can't just be like, it's black and white, but at what point do you stop and consider others, right? We were talking about this, and I don't want to go into detail because we have a lot of questions today, but at what point do you say, you know what, there's another way to get to my dreams and to get to my passions, right? Like maybe I could work a night job and have an unpaid internship. And yes, that's a lot, but I want it. And me as an entrepreneur and feeling where Chris was, I could work 24 hours. I could be like, that's what I want, I feel in my bones that I'm like, don't need to sleep. That's what I really want, right? There's other ways, I guess is what we were saying, that there's other ways to do things to get to your passion. So in my mind, I would have said, okay, let me try to work a night job. Let me try to work an odds and end job. Now, that was the 80s. Now we could do an Instacart or Uber, right? Like, let me try to get different ways to get money for my family to stabilize them, then to go to an unpaid internship.
Right. Yeah. I mean, just looking at his situation, he was already, had tax questions, tax implications, and obviously rent was back due. So it's like, and that's why I said irrational, is because you can't in my mind, you can't make that leap of faith to just say, okay, let me get an unpaid internship. While when he did, eye the opportunity, it was in, he looked at the car and he said, oh wow, what do you do? So he pointed to I'm a stockbroker. So it came from a good place, but back to what Ashley said, you have to make a calculated risk when you do have a wife and family that in the situation you're in, you have to do a little bit more thinking, I guess.
Definitely agree. I took a risk in 2018, when we first started dating. So I was in a different profession, and then I took a risk and left that job. It took me a year to make that decision, but I didn't have kids. I didn't have a husband. I wasn't even in a relationship. I was renting a room in an apartment that my dad owned in Brooklyn. So if I didn't have to pay rent, I knew I had like a few months underneath my belt. But that risk has tremendously paid off. Like, it's 2022? And the income has just like tripled. So like, I get it, but I commend you guys taking that risk with children, because I don't know if I would have.
Yeah, and to your point, like by yourself, it's like something else. I look back and I'm like, oh, if I was in my 20s, I wish I could take those leaps of faith, but I would not have been taking those great leaps of faith if it wasn't for my husband or my kids, which is like,
You needed the piece
I needed that.
It's so interesting. Love it.
I just wanted to join my wife in that point and say, like, and your point is like, it's different when you're by yourself. When you're by yourself, you can definitely take more risks. Like, I came to New York in 2010 for film school, because there's no film school where I'm from in Kansas City. And I was like, I took that risk to move to one of the most expensive cities in the world to do that. And because of it, I've had so many opportunities. It's part of the reason why I'm here right now. I've gotten to meet so many people, and I met my wife, ultimately, my dream. You know what I'm saying? And so I think it was one of those things where it's like, when you're by yourself, you're a bachelor, bachelorette, yeah, but when you do have kids, it changes a bit. Because we don't have kids at the moment, like, I would have done everything in my power to take care of my son. Like you said, 24 hours, work this job. Okay, internship in the morning. Okay, I got to do that, do this, and then we can get there. Or another thing I think about is like, where's family? The other side of family. Maybe my son can stay with my family. I do this internship and this job, work it out until then. Then go get my son, of course, and then we can make things work. But my son should not have to suffer from poor decisions.
I have a question, and I get the point that you guys are making. Your kids should not have to suffer, like you said. 24 hours, though, I'm wondering if that's realistic, because personally, I need to have 8 hours of sleep. This isn't me just saying, like, I'm a Mariah Carey type stuff. I need 8 hours. Like, I literally mean, like, if I don't get 8 hours, like, for a week straight, I'm going to start functioning like a walking zombie. I will not produce as well, anything that I put my hands on. And so, like, that's not even an option for me to do that. And so, and I know I would then not be the best mother to my child. You know what I'm saying? So I guess I'm just thinking, I know you suggested another option, but well, you were talking about being able to rely on family, but that's also not the case for everybody, having family around. So then in that case, let's just assume he doesn't have family, because I feel like he would have pulled on that, if that was an option. And let's say he was like me and needed 8 hours of sleep. I don't know. What would you do? What would you do then?
That's a good point. I think what I was saying was, the spirit that I have in me can keep going. One, because my son, like, that came out of my body, so I'm going to do everything. So sleep is on the back burner. It's not a priority. And also, like, it's like a different feeling. Like, I would die for my kids, literally. And I know that's dramatic, but like, that's how I feel. So sleep is like, that's just sleep. I would die, And so I love it. I'm serious though. That's like the thing. And he like laughs at me. I'm like, no, I'm serious. I'm a mama bear. So, but what I'm saying is that like something's in me that keeps me going. Like it's like a caffeine that you always have. And so one, that's sleep, but two, I think what I was really saying is that there's other ways to get money, like to have that stability. And in the movie, they didn't have stability. They were living in, what would you say? Survival mode. Yeah. And when you're in survival mode, you can't really think and you
act differently.
Yeah, and he was trying his best to do what he could with what he had. But I believe that there's other ways that you could at least get out of survival mode first.
To Chazine's point, I'm just sitting here listening to you guys talk about calculated risk and operating on your own. You know, when my husband and I met, it was in the pandemic, and I'm a creative. I've always been in survival mode. I've lived out of a car. I've done the whole New York, like making it happen. Whereas he's a calculated risk individual to where he would never put me in harm's way, and kind of having that support was a resource that through marriage and partnership I was able to have. So just thinking about Chris in the film and what happens when his wife left, his resources are cut in half. Even if we know that his family's there or not there, sometimes you have to operate as if it's just you two. And so he really couldn't make that many calculated risks when your whole other half is gone. In our marriage, I'm able to, it's kind of like a pendulum. This year, my husband has a corporate job, but he joined the military. That's a calculated risk that we made. And please believe we talk every day. I was telling some friends earlier about, I don't think a week goes by without us talking about where we are with our calculated risk. And I love how invested he is in making sure that I, like you were saying, to actually feel fulfilled. And I'm hitting my certain benchmarks, because he has made it a priority to make sure that I never feel like I'm the only one making compromise and sacrifices. So our calculated risk operate out of what are our resources, what is the goal? And sometimes it's us operating off of him. Sometimes it's, okay, this is my goal for next year. We'll focus on you this year. These are the steps we need to make sure that we can kind of hit our goals together. And we are each other's resources, but that in and of itself is a privilege.
Yeah, I mean, we all keep coming back to calculated risk, but I wonder, you know, did Chris make his own calculated risk, right? I mean, I remember watching the film plenty of times and being like, that's so admirable. And yes, I think it was extreme, but like, I almost feel like if you believe in yourself so much, you know you're gonna make it. And so it's almost like there is no doubt in your mind that you are gonna make it. So it almost is a sure bet. And so even though for maybe you all, his calculated risk was too much, is there, you know, kind of some grace with it? It worked for him and he always believed in himself, so it was fine.
Honestly, I'm sitting here thinking like, just off of what you guys said, absolutely. As a woman, I'm very clear that I have the privilege to do that. Whereas I'm very clear that my husband does not. The planning and the devastation of every move that he makes is very different than it is for me. He is the head of our household, and I don't have that stress. I'm his support. He's my support. And I can't imagine, it speaks volumes that Chris, as a man and a father, still made that. I think he kind of had to make that choice. I can't imagine it happening any other way. Absolutely. They would have stayed in that subway if he had not have done something and had the quality to observe his environment, see where his resources are, and the priority being his child. We don't even have kids yet. And I'm just like, this is the craziest year of my life. But it does speak to him being a man and kind of having to make a move.
I think too, and to your point, really all great points. Like when you do bet on yourself, you definitely, and you know that you can see it, you know that you know that you know, it creates this faith, man. Like for me, I remember all the hard times and all the hardships and every stop that happened through my acting journey, all the doors shut in auditions, all of the times that people like, you know, different agencies said no, and all of these different things that happened where like apartment that I wanted, I lost. I thought, like, I took that as motivation to just keep pushing forward. And that's what you see, I think, too, with Chris. Like, I was, because the reason why I pause is because it really is like, wow, my mindset just changed. Because I'm like, wow, he really is betting on himself to see this plan that he has through. And you can see it directly through the whole movie. He has this point of view like, okay, I'm going to work this internship. This has to work. I'm putting all my cards and all my eggs in one basket because I have to see this through. This is what I have, you know?
I hear that Chris had no plan B. That was like the best part. Yeah. I loved it because I identified with it. When I left my previous profession, my family was like, what are you gonna do? Do you have a plan B? And I was like, no. Because plan A is going to work. There was no like, because there was no plan B, I get it with Chris. He had to make that work. And I love that. Like, you work as if 24 hours, like you just have to make that work. Like,
Absolutely.
your spirit, your motivation comes so rooted deep in, like you don't have anything else to fall back on. So I love that he didn't have a plan B.
Yeah.
You
like
guys?
you said, yeah.
Well, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say one last comment, babe, that was great. Just because he didn't have
I love the support.
he didn't
He about to
didn't-
slam him. But
No, he didn't have the great point that you made was that he didn't have that other income. He didn't have that other person to lean on. He didn't have his wife to lean on. So it's just like, okay, I don't have my wife. It's just me. I have to bet on me. I have to make this work because my son doesn't know, but I have to make this work. You know?
So you all made really good points. And I want to recognize there actually was quite a considerable time jump, right? We talk about his plan A was just getting that internship, but originally his plan A was actually the bone density scanners, right? If you remember, he had like piles and piles of them in his house. And, you know, his wife was working double shifts, so she was doing a lot. And it wasn't until he saw someone in a nice car that things switched, right? And so for a lot of people, maybe it would be getting a 9-to-5, working those double shifts so that you have an opportunity to jump into a second entrepreneurial role, but he jumped right into it. So I wonder, does that change the way you all perceive Chris Gardner?
So I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. Let's not act like Chris Gardner's wife wasn't there shooting with him in the gym, essentially. She was also carrying those bone density scanners. She also had a pep in her step. And over time, to your point, it became clear that I'm sure we don't know as an audience whether she had conversations, hey babe, this is not really working for us.
She gave up, though.
We're behind. She gave up, but they had a whole child from a newborn to a young kid in school, which costs money in and of itself. Things are changing. What are we doing? We didn't get to see those conversations, but by the time that we see them at this point before she leaves, she's done. I think she's probably tried everything she has to have a conversation of, is it time to have a new plan? I think we skip over that too often. And yeah, he had like 8 million bone density scanners and maybe sold 7. So they're housing, we see them from this big house and the sun's shining and all these other things. They can afford a basketball for their son to, she can't even sit down and have a meal with her family. She had to work a double shift because even the fact that she has a double shift says, I'm making up for the gap in the plan A that we decided on. So with you not having a plan B, what you want me to do? And she did say, I want to take the son because he needs to be with his mother. And he was like, no.
Do you think that's a role that she should have had to take on as a woman? Or does it not matter what her...
I mean, that's partnership. I feel like she was down. Did she probably do it reluctantly? Yeah, but she was a team player. We can't take that away from her. It's unfortunate that she left. I do wish that, they could have gotten to a new pattern or rhythm, but would he have been so motivated or focused when he saw that gentleman in the car? I think sometimes things have to happen for you to have a different perspective or for you to realize what's urgent and what's important.
If you were, I don't know her real name in real life, but if you were his wife later now, you see that he's making money, the career is popping. Are you gonna feel bad? Or are you gonna be like, I'm not even gonna give an alternate answer. I'm just curious how you guys would feel.
Couldn't be me.
I think she made the right decision.
Okay.
She was literally going to be homeless. She couldn't eat. She couldn't afford. She couldn't live. So she made the right decision. And yeah, she probably looking back like, oh man, but you're like you're at the breaking point. Right. She was about to have a nervous breakdown. It's like for your mental health, for your place of living, where you're going to lay your head. You're at that bottom of the barrel. Like you gotta go, right? I agree that she had to leave.
I agree with you too, because I'm just thinking about everything, like you said, mentally that would have done to you. Would that be worth it? Right. And what effects would that have later? And we don't even know how long that period of time lasted, because it was a movie and it went so quickly.
But I know she hurt though. You know, like think about that brother that took Beyonce to prom. You know, like, man, that brother hurt, man. He's like, I should have held on a little tighter.
Just a little.
You know, and she wasn't in the gym with him shooting. But at some point she left the gym.
She did. And to be honest, if I were her, I would have probably made the same decision, but had fought to keep my child with me until he found a balance, because children are a whole different ball game. Like, we don't have children yet, but please believe that's going to become a priority. And I'm not willing to gamble that balance. So I think the only thing she probably would have changed was taking her son with her, not leaving, because Chris can lend a couple $100 now.
Yeah.
Praise Jesus. You're welcome.
I mean, Chazine brought up a great point though, right? Because I think, and Femi, you touched on it, right? This responsibility that men have, right? Whether it's perceived or it's real. Mm-hmm. And so you all, you know, were able to make that decision you mentioned because your husband had that job, and thankfully so. And I know you've talked about you sitting down with your husband and making calculated decisions, checking in with one another. And so how does that play out in terms of the man's role? Because I think because Chris Gardner, he wasn't that foundation, that's why I think it's perceived as like, oh, he was wilding out. You know, she was the one working double shifts. He should have been, and maybe allowing her to maybe be more creative. And so does the fact that he was the man and not holding it down change? You know, if the roles were reversed, would you feel the same way?
I mean, with watching the movie and just kind of looking at his actions, you know, a couple words come to mind. You know, he was very stubborn, you know, just for keeping with the bone density, you know, gonna sell. And it's funny watching him walk around with that as his briefcase every day. Right. And also he was very determined and he was very desperate. And you know, just looking at it from a male perspective, I admire his determination. You know, I admire his willingness to go out on his own and kind of pursue a new career that he saw that could be lucrative for him. And his basis was his family. His basis was his son to get the most income he could see possible. But again, as that male figure, you do have to provide that stability. And I think that going out on your own is kind of destabilizing everything. I saw his wife as the one working the double shifts, doing what she could in her job to keep it afloat, you know? So I mean, I think he has great points about him and some that kind of, you know, as that masculinity, as that male role model and figure that he kind of fell short of.
But to your point, I'm going to share a story about, I quit my full-time job in 2019, December 31st, right? The pandemic happened 3 months later, but I'm a full-time entrepreneur at that time. And so for 5 months, I had to close my Manhattan location, my Union location, I had to close my business. And looking at my partner, who also was affected by the pandemic in his job, like it wasn't a pay decrease, but a position, we were all like a little like, what's gonna happen? I kicked it into like something lit underneath me because I'm like, I'm not gonna let him just carry all the weight. We just had sold a house or bought a house. I can't remember at that point, but we were getting properties. Yeah, we were getting, but it was like risky financially, and we were nervous. And hold on, let me finish my point. And what I'm saying is like, I was looking at like, okay, can I work a night shift on the phone, remote, making $10 an hour? I didn't care how many, I was obviously making that like way more than that in my business, but I'm like, what can I do to pay the water bill, to pay the light bill, to put the kids, to get them like at our neighbor's house to babysit while I can do this? Like thinking of ways I wasn't gonna let my family fail. And although we admire Chris, right? We admire Chris. I feel like we were in it in the pandemic where like my heart was beating every day. I couldn't sleep because I had to work. And you even were like, well, let me Uber, let me DoorDash, like let me do it. We were together, to your point, like the wife working doubles, but also the man working doubles could work doubles too.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, in our situation, she quit her job and we opened the business and, you know, it's kind of started 2020 full time. So, I mean, when that came around, you know, part of being a marriage, it's a union, you know, you kind of have to come together and say, okay, we made this decision. What are we going to do now? So, I mean, we use tactics that would benefit our business, you know, in terms of the virtual world. So coming together with that, to kind of adapt, because nobody knew what was going to happen, how long it was going to last for. So we kind of tapped into a virtual part of our business that kind of got us through. So it's really, and that's something I didn't really see in the movie, is that sit down and let's figure it out. They never really did that. Again, is a desperation. They were in survival mode, like we said earlier, and it was kind of not in their area.
What's interesting is people don't talk enough about how lit it is to just have like a everyday partner, to sit down and strategize and talk about finances, personal goals. I think you need to call your mom more, like just have that checks and balance. It's frustrating at times and there's hard conversations, but every day is lit because we get to talk about these things, and you really do have that partnership. And I just love that about my marriage. But one thing I have noticed, and I can't say this is due to gender, but it's just how me and my husband are. My husband's Liberian. He's an African man, very traditional, but he was raised to be very responsible, very committed, very much a planner to my benefit. Because when we do strategize, all those things that are expected of him from his family, when we strategize, he's already coming into the conversation of problem solving, being very risk adverse. It's occupational hazard, I think, but he and his friends, I've noticed, are like that. And they're single too, but they also are very diligent in how they approach relationships, their businesses, friendships. I'm curious to you guys, like what your experience is for what you believe is expected of you with that partnership. Because I've noticed that in my husband and his friends, even if they're single, the marital status is different, but their qualities are similar.
That's a good one.
I mean, the first thing when it comes to protection for me, or the first characteristic is protection. And I think protection involves just more than just the safety, but it provides at least a basic level of providing, whether that is financial, whether that is spiritual, whether that is emotional. I think it is the man's role to protect. And it's funny because I know we're at the time where there are less gender roles and anyone can do anything. And one of the first things I think of is like, well, when somebody breaks the house, like who's the one to do it? Of course it's the man. But then I've heard someone make the analogy, well, who's probably breaking in the house? Or like, who's the one starting these issues? It's probably another man on the other side, And so I take that role very seriously. Even as we somewhat get away from gender roles, I want to fulfill that role because also that makes me feel like I'm doing my job. It makes me feel worthy. It makes me feel needed. But curious what people think.
No, I think stability, I mean, economically, emotionally, really. I mean, I don't want to see my wife stressed because, that can transfer. So, I mean, anything that I can do to keep her stress level down, whether it's cleaning, cooking, so the gender roles are not really in my mind at that point. It's really making sure that she's good, to put it simply, it's just really stability.
And I think we didn't really expect gender roles. I think now we're looking at, since we're 6 years in marriage, more roles versus like gender roles, but like to help each other,
Who's ever more fit to take care of that role is gonna fulfill it.
Playing to strengths and weaknesses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a good point because to your point of expectations, I thought I was gonna be like domestic in regards to like cooking and cleaning and owning a business and being a wife and doing arts and crafts every day. Like I literally thought that, one, because I saw my mother do it, right? Like, and it was a different time, but I look at her as an idol. But then I'm like, I don't want to do that. That's like another side of my brain, but I want to do it for my family. But in regards to gender, like I don't want to cook and clean and he knows it. So like what I'll do instead is like hire somebody to do those things for us. And he's like happy with it. I outsource and focus on the things that we do love together.
Yeah, I think coming into the marriage, we had, very simplistic things. We were talking about just kind of simplistic visions and views on what we expected out of a marriage, obviously starting this new journey with each other. And to date, we kind of, like I said, we strengths and weaknesses. Whoever can fill that role. If you got to clean, you got to clean. So it's it's really about adapting to the marriage and to life, to the journey, to fulfill it. Because obviously you want your marriage to be successful, you want it to work out. So you're going to do everything in your power, even if you didn't come into it with that outlook.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. I think I always say this to my wife: is expectations versus reality. Always expectations versus reality. What you expect that's going to happen, in the reality of what is going to happen. Like sometimes, like I think as men, we get in our head, we're like, okay, I'm gonna go home. It's gonna be food on the table.
What are you saying?
It's gonna be hot. And the reality is, it's cereal. It's cereal, but I ain't gonna lie, cereal be busting though. Cereal be busting. You know what I'm saying? No, but and that's no jab at you, babe. That's no jab. She like, tell me what's on your mind. I think the thing is just, but when you understand, like you said, it's roles. More than anything, like her father and her mother, they're Caribbean, so it's like they're Haitian, so it's like you cook, woman clean, woman do this, woman do that. Man takes care of the house, man takes care of the yard, man goes to work, does this, does that, pays this, pays that. You know what I'm saying? And it's so streamlined. For me, I'm like, where's the work at? Let's do it together. Like, I don't mind doing laundry. Like, I know it has, she's like, babe, I just feel so bad because you're doing the laundry all the time and I'm never picking up anything. I'm like, babe, like, it got to get done. It just has to.
What are you talking about?
He's putting me on blast.
Like, I do something.
I'm like, sorry. But my wife, she cooks excellently. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to ask anything. I gotta get back. Get it back. Come on, no, but I can't put a price on it. Like finances, when it comes to finances and balancing a budget, she's excellent at that. So I'm like, okay, I bring this to her. I'm like, okay, all of these things that we do, it's just roles, point blank, period. Like, I know that my wife works all of these hours. So I'm like, okay, what could I do to support you, love? How could I help you? Like what? She's the same way. She knows I come home late. She's like, babe, okay, listen, I got the shower ready. I got this together. Like, there's food on the table. Like, what? Like, how could I support you? How can I help you? How did your day go? That's more important than anything. Is like that statement right there. My love language is words. You know that. So she's just asking that question it helps me. She helps me balance. Mm-hmm. Like, she's my equilibrium.
Okay, you got 2 points.
See that?
You got 2 points.
Great job, Fred. Great job.
Just to add to it real quick, I would just say, like he mentioned, I come from a Caribbean background. So you're so used to seeing the role of a man, like he's providing stability in a household. And for us, it's been different. We're more of a partnership. We're both creatives. And where my career kicked off faster, he's still an aspiring actor, comedian, and he's also working a full-time job. So it was like, I think you mentioned, like, there's seasons where you rely on one partner, and like where finance may be where he relies on me for more. Fred makes breakfast every morning. He does the laundry. I cook dinner, but we like balanced it out. And to my parents, it's like, what's happening? So really, it's a partnership. And I believe, even though my parents may be looking at it like, oh my gosh, like, you guys are doing it so different from how we did it. We don't have to do their same path. And it's a new generation, it's a new way. And we're creatives. I believe creatives naturally, we're taking, our path won't look like anyone else's.
Completely agreed with what you're saying. I want to piggyback off of that because we both had great upbringings. Both of our parents are together for 40 something years now. Yeah. And to your point, we had to kind of like get rid of the idea of this is how I was raised. This is what I bring to the table. This is how my father did things. This is how my mother did things. And we now are, this is how we do things. But we did bring the best things from both of those marriages to ours. So I truly agree with what you're saying because it's about your marriage, right?
Exactly.
The partner, snaps all around. The partnership mentioned really was so like key, because I think that's the thing that relationship lacked, at least in that chapter, what we were seeing, the partnership, and that's probably why it had to dissolve, right? But once again, I'm just learning so much from all these conversations, Marquise. So I appreciate it, all you lovely married couples, and this was good. Pursuit of Happyness, this is a little tearjerker, right? Yeah. Did y'all cry?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a sucker.
That's okay. We gonna continue this conversation over drinks, but thank you, y'all, for joining us.
Thank you, you guys.
Thank you.
All right, so do you guys remember that scene in The Pursuit of Happyness where Will Smith's character saw that car, the guy driving the car, and he was like, that's what I want to do. He knew at that moment that that's what he wanted to do and pursue in his life. I'm curious to hear about your moments like that. When did you know exactly what it was that you wanted to pursue in life, these ventures that you guys have all invested your time in?
I think when me and my wife started our business and I saw just the joy that she had, and and it was really not really at the event itself, it was after the fact and talking about it and kind of debriefing on the whole situation. She wasn't like that when she had to do her reports on the Sunday night. She was engaged in it and couldn't wait to do the next one, and obviously seeing those pile up, and I was like, you know what, that was in maybe mid-year of 2019, during paternity leave and maternity leave, when we kind of worked it out to do it at the same time. So it was really just the mounting up of that and kind of debriefing and seeing kind of the joy she had. And then after every week, prior, seeing her like, oh, I got to do this report. There were great perks with that, but combination of everything in that sense did not equate to what I saw, like her being fulfilled.
When I originally moved to New York, back to New York, we were living in Pennsylvania and I did college out there. Came back to New York and I was like, I want to be a celebrity makeup artist. And my celebrity was Beyonce. I want to work for Beyonce and do her makeup. Well, that didn't happen, but I went into corporate positions, and my last corporate job, the CEO, he started his company from the ground up and he always talked about that. And there was a meeting that he had me spearheading.